start with the serum chemistry. Now, you all have had a good exposure to it, particularly in the problem base and this type of thing. So let's just reinforce that exposure a little bit. Now, as far as chemical analysis of both serum and plasma, it's an extremely important component of any clinical pathological evaluation. Okay? Now, the test should be designed to give you as much information as possible about the nature of the disease present, right? In other words, if it's something that is present in their liver cells, and it's very high in the blood, well, they take that problem with it. The liver cells, this type of thing, okay? And it's also important to know what not to run as it is to know what to run. In other words, if you, let's say you think you have an animal that comes in, you don't know anything about you, you say, well, I'm into endocrinology, so I'm going to run this big endocrinology panel. And the animal has no problems as far as the endocrine system is concerned. What have you just done? Wasted a lot of money. You probably lost a client, okay? So in other words, you need to know initially what to run. Now after you get that, if the animal did come back and there's indication it may have endocrine problems, then you can justify running your more expensive panels and that type of thing. Okay? So that's why in our basic panels, they are designed so that we can evaluate all our systems. And they have, is it just one test per system, or do we usually have a combination? It's usually a combination, because can one parameter be a little messed up in any animal? But it's not as likely to have both of them, unless there's a problem with whatever they're coming from, right? Okay, let's look at this. Substance that we use as far as clinical chemistry, there's enzymes, your various electrolytes, minerals, calcium, this type of thing. Some hormones, again, these are not usually done in the routine panel, but they are in your more advanced panels. And products of metabolism. What's a product of metabolism? How about glucose? How about cholesterol? Those types of things. How about blood urea nitrogen? Creatinine. All those are products of metabolism. And what the products of metabolism can indicate if you have interference with the conversion or interference with the excretion. In other words, what is the product of amino acid metabolism? One product. Ammonia, NH3, which reacts with H and gives you ammonia, right? And so if I have elevated blood ammonia levels, what might that tell me about my liver function? Not work, that's a hepatic insufficiency. And so that could tell me. Or what if, what's the kidney supposed to do with creatinine and blood urea nitrogen? Excrete it. What if the levels are elevated in the blood? Does that tell me they're not being excreted properly? Okay, so it can be either formation, conversion, or excretion. It can all be what we say as far as interference or products of metabolism is concerned. Okay, now the desired properties of a test. Well, to be useful as a chemical indicator, what do you have to be able to do? You got to have a test to measure it, right? It also has to be as specific as possible for the organ being examined. Now, very few of our clinical chemistry tests are specific for just one organ. Again, that's why we run a panel. For instance, alanine aminotransferase, ALT, and what's the major source of that? Where is it? It's in the liver cell. AST is aspartate aminotransferase. Where's it? Mainly in the liver and the striated muscle. Where's CK? Creatine kinase, the striated muscle. So what if I have an animal that has elevated ALT, a dog has elevated ALT, AST, and CK? What do I know? Muscle and liver. What if it has ALT and AST, normal CK? Liver. What if it's normal ALT and elevated AST and CK? Muscle. See how we use to test the panel together. Okay, because it's very difficult to find anything where it's only sensitive, it's only, specific only for one organ. Because there are, we can say there's no such thing as 100%. Now, sorbitol dehydrogenase, does anybody know where it is? Predominantly in the liver. Okay, so it's pretty liver specific, but again, it's 150 times higher in blood cells than it is in the plasma. So what happens if I have hemolysis? It goes up, that type of thing. So in other words, that's why we use panels. Everybody follow me on that? And it's not to get more money. Okay, it's to get more information. All right. Now, you also have to, the levels have to become measurably elevated in serum following damage. For example, a horse. Can we use ALT to evaluate horse liver? Anybody? Well, I mean, it might go from there's one international unit in the blood, it might go to 2. That's a 100% increase, but is that any kind of an increase from 1 to 2? Does anybody know why we can't use ALT in the horse? Huh? What's alanine? What kind of amino acid is alanine?
Oh, it's from.
It's mainly in meats. Do horses eat much meat? No. Now you'll see some in their muscle because it's in the muscle cell itself, okay? But we can't use ALT to evaluate the horse, okay? Right. Now also, basically you've got to have a normal range established. If you don't have a normal range, can you interpret anything from your results? And those normal ranges, you have to make sure it is in the particular species you're dealing with, and very often also within the age range that you're dealing with, okay? Also, you've got to have a very efficient method of assay, and it must be available and as specific as possible for you. And what else does it not usually have to be as far as price? It's got to be reasonably priced, okay? Now, specificity. As I say, very few tests will fulfill, all these desired criteria. As far as specificity is concerned, there's no such thing as 100%. Okay? So basically, there's a few that we consider that, like ALT in the liver of a dog and a cat. We also may look at CK and striated muscle of animals. But, there's always a little bit, and some animals will always not read the book too. Okay, so again, that's why we run more than one test. You can use your more non-specific indicators if you have a panel that you can compare them to, like we did with the AST and CK. In other words, AST is in more than one tissue, right? So we can't say that's specific for liver or specific for muscle. But if we run another test which is more specific for those, then we say, oh yeah, this AST is coming from here. Everybody follow me on that? Okay. Now, a single test should never be used to assess the total health status of an organ. All right? And for proper interpretation, you've got to understand what can be affecting those test results also. In other words, what's the mechanism that causes these elevations of these things in the blood? And basically, if it's, in other words, ALT, elevated in a dog, oh my heavens, I got liver failure. Not true. ALT is a hepatocellular leakage enzyme. You can look at the liver cell funny and it'll leak out. And it can still function fully. Okay, so we can't, do that, just looking at it like that. But what if I have very low glucose? I get hypoglycemia in the animal. I have high bilirubin in the blood of the animal. Okay, I have low albumin. And I don't have any protein-losing nephropathy or enteropathy. Can that then be used to assess the function of the liver?
Yes.
Right, so there's different tiers that we look at like that, okay? And the circulating half-lives. In other words, this animal may have had damage back 2 weeks ago. And if the assay we're using has one insult back there, and the test we're using, the chemical has a very short half-life, is it likely to give us any results after 2 weeks? No. Now what if it has a very short half-life, the animal did get this insult 2 weeks ago, and that test is still very high? Does that tell you it was a single incident, or this animal got ongoing damage? It's ongoing damage if you're looking at if it's still elevated past its half-life. Okay? That means you're getting more and more out there, right? So you have to look for that. Also the routes of excretion. In other words, these things that normally come into the blood, various organs will excrete them, right? So what if we've got, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example here right now. We have this substance that is normally eliminated through the liver, but there's a circulatory disturbance in this animal. Could that slow down the excretion of this animal because you've got problems with circulation to this organ or something? And so you have to think about that, the routes of excretion that can be affected. In other words, well, amylase and lipase. When we have elevated blood amylase and lipase, what problem do we usually think of? Anybody?
Yes.
Acute pancreatic necrosis. What else do we have to worry about? Amylase and lipase are removed from the blood through the kidney. What if I have kidney damage? What will that do to my amylase and lipase? I'm going to have that acute pancreatic necrosis. And the pancreas in there saying, I'm fine, look at the kidney. Okay, so that's why we have to be aware of routes of excretion. Y'all with me on that? It'd be nice if these things would talk to us, then we wouldn't have much problem diagnosing stuff, right? But unfortunately, that doesn't work. And also some non-disease related factors can affect some of our things. In other words, what if I'm on a diet and I really cut back on my carbohydrates? What's that going to do to my blood glucose? It's going to decrease it. Okay, does that have anything, is that, well, dieting can be a disease, but anyway, does that have anything to do with the disease? No. So, and what are we going to learn about, figure out, or find out about all these things? What do we have to make sure we do before we run an interpretive clinical pathology? Physical exam and history. Okay? Now, you also have to consider how high above normal your elevation is in your animals. Generally, increases of less than 2 times normal for our enzymes we consider insignificant, and especially if there's nothing else on the panel that tells us we got a problem somewhere. Okay, so a comparison of levels of several different indicators, in other words, your biochemical profile, can give you a more accurate assessment. In other words, what if I have an animal that's got elevated LDH? Lactate dehydrogenase. Now that's not very specific for any tissues. Any tissue that converts lactate to pyruvate in there. Okay, but what that's elevated. So I'm thinking, well, this might be a problem in striated muscle. What should also be elevated to support that? CK and AST. Okay. So in other words, that's what we use our biochemical profiling for, to find out where the problem is. Now, what if that LDH is elevated, nothing else is? What could that tell you? Tell you smooth muscle. Okay, so we look at things like that. Now, precautions. As we say, we got normal ranges, right? Does that mean that every animal we evaluate is going to fall in those normal ranges exactly? No. In other words, any animal that is perfectly normal can give an occasional abnormal test result. That's why we have to look at do our physical exam and everything in history. Because if something's very elevated but that animal shows no clinical signs of it or anything else, could it be just an aberrant thing in this animal? And that's what we have to consider. It's estimated that about 46% of all normal subjects will have at least one abnormal test result on a chemistry panel. That's a pretty significant percentage, isn't it? Okay. Also, individuals with severe organ disease can have test results which are within the reference range. And one of the things we have to worry about that is we're measuring, how do we measure most of these clinical chemistry things? What kind of instrument? It's a spectrophotometer. A lot of the enzymes there's linear regression analysis with it. We take multiple readings. Now, what if I have a very high elevation of an enzyme? Can it use up, and what it's doing is measuring the disappearance of products and the appearance of, disappearance of reagents and the development of products. Okay? That's what we're measuring on these linear regression analysis. What if I have a very high amount of the enzyme? Can it go meet and convert that like that? We get one reading, and then we don't get any more readings. That's not, we didn't have very high elevations of that. That's substrate exhaustion. And that can be all. Anybody familiar with substrate exhaustion? Basically, it means is that you've used up your substrate so rapidly that you didn't get but one reading, and it's down here. That doesn't mean you didn't have that enzyme. You had a lot of that enzyme that went very quickly. So those are some of the things that we have to use as far as evaluating these things, okay? And the bottom line is In order to avoid misinterpretation and confusion, systemic assessment of chemistry data must be used in conjunction with what? Physical exam findings, history findings, and any other diagnostic tests you may have run. Okay? And what we've been emphasizing in problem-based medicine? The same thing. So what is medicine involved? This. Okay? What does malpractice not involve? This. Okay? So, again, we have to emphasize that clinical pathological evaluation does not ameliorate the need for a thorough physical examination. Okay? How many of you been to MD's office and they didn't do much of an examination, they draw blood samples? Probably, if you think about it, everybody's been to MD, they probably see that, right? In my experience with most of our MD practitioners, they don't know very much about clinical pathology, period. Okay? But I have had some of them ask me my opinion, so let me feel good on that, all right? Or so I went to one doctor's office, there was another case they were working on, and I said, well, how did you interpret this? Do I get a referral fee? Nope. All right, so let's look at our chemistry test. And some of the more important organs we evaluate with serum chemistry, of course, are the liver, the kidney, pancreas. Can we do much with the CNS? Yeah. Because is it protected from body stuff? Now we can do a CSF. That's not a routine clinical chemistry, but we can do a CSF. Okay. What about the skin? Any clinical chemistry much with the skin? Not really. Now CBC may tell us something as far as whether or not we got inflammation or something like that. Okay. How about the lungs? Is there very much on routine clinical chemistry we can evaluate the lungs with? That's the only thing is the acid base, and that's not really a component usually of routine. That's a secondary thing that you do if you think you have a problem. Now, what's total CO2? That's bicarb. That is on a routine panel very often, so that can give you an idea. But well, I've got a dog that the total CO2 is down on the bottom. How would I interpret that? What's my acid-base interpretation? And the pH of the urine is really acidic. Some metabolic acidosis probably, right? Well, could that be in a compensatory mechanism for respiratory problem? In other words, if an animal is blowing on, has a respiratory alkalosis, what's the compensatory mechanism? Metabolic acidosis. So how can we determine which one it is?
Acid-base. Your acid base.
Well, I can do it cheap. What's that? Well, it's not cheap if you don't have one, but a thing you put in your ears, and you put up beside the chest. You also measure the respiratory rate, and the respiratory rate is about 2. All right, and it's basically very little respiration. What do you think came first, the metabolic problem or the respiratory problem? Respiratory problems. Those type of things we're looking at. Or if the respiration really increased, very deep. In other words, you've got to evaluate those two things together to figure out what's going on. Okay. But that's not what's routine. Now you can do an acid-base panel. So again, that's not what we consider routine. Routine is the basic clinical panel we do. Okay. Now, as far as liver, we break down the definition of the problems in the liver as being hepatocellular leakage, cholestasis, or loss of functional hepatic mass. Those are our 3 subclassifications as far as evaluating the liver with ClinPath. Okay. Hepatocellular leakage, those are your enzymes predominantly. Alanine aminotransferase, AST, aspartate aminotransferase. Y'all need to know what those anagrams stand for. I've had students come back from taking the board and say, I knew the answer to that question, Dr. Graham, but I didn't realize that's what that was. Because they didn't have the AST, they may have aspartate aminotransferase in there. Okay, so you need to know which ones are which, okay? SDH, sorbitol dehydrogenase, LDH, lactate dehydrogenase. These indicate hepatocellular leakage. Now, which one can tell you, which one of those you think indicates more severe hepatocellular leakage? ALT, SDH, and LDH are all cytosolic, almost 100%. AST is about 70% inside the mitochondria. If I have severe liver damage, will I get mitochondrial damage? So in other words, the ALT-AST ratio in blood is about 1 to 1. And what if I have both of them elevated, and my ratio is, still 1 to 1, or maybe 2 to 1, or something like that? I can look at that. In other words, if my ALT and AST, normally, when you have liver down, since it's in the mitochondria mainly, and I have just minor perturbation, am I going to get much release of AST? So they'll both be elevated a little bit, because there is some in cytosol, but you're going to have more ALT compared to AST out there. Both are markedly elevated, and it's equally. What did I tell you about the severity? It's more severe. Y'all follow that? We'll get into cases and see if we see that, all right? Now, cholestasis. Why would bilirubin indicate cholestasis? Where does bilirubin come from? It comes from red blood cell breakdown, right? As you unconjugate bilirubin, it goes to the liver and it conjugates. And what does it do with most of it? It goes out through the bile. Well, if the bile duct's blocked, what's going to happen to our blood levels of bilirubin? It's going to be up. It's going to be mainly conjugated bilirubin, but all will be up. Okay? Well, alkaline phosphatase, SAP. Now you will see ALK, SP, SAP, all kinds of anagrams for alkaline phosphatase. Okay, what's the function of alkaline phosphatase? Anybody? It's mainly in the secretory cells. It facilitates secretion of the substances the cell makes. Okay? Where do you think it's located in a liver cell? Predominantly. What's the canalicular membrane? Back to your anatomy, what's the canalicular membrane? In other words, you've got the hepatocyte here. The canalicular membrane is on the bottom. You got your cords of hepatocytes. The canalicular membrane will be like that. And what's forming?